Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's special episode of Real Estate Disruptors. Today we have Kyle Wyloge with Buying AZ Homes, another juggernaut in the Phoenix market, and he's going to share how he's been quietly wholesaling 6 to 8 houses a month and keeping 1 or 2 as rentals. If this is your first time tuning in, I am Steve Trang, broker and owner of Stunning Homes Realty, founder of the Offer Fast Homes app, the only MLS for off-market wholesale properties. And I'm on a mission to create 100 millionaires, so if you want to join me in that mission, let's connect on Instagram at steve.trang. If you're excited for today's show, please give me a wave, give me a thumbs up, and as a friendly reminder, I do not charge a dime for this show. I don't make any money doing this, so here's all I ask is what it costs for you to listen to this show. I've been advised by a consultant that I need to get to 500 5-star reviews in iTunes to hit some of my crazy goals. So please do me a favor, go into iTunes, subscribe, give a 5-star review, and if you can write what you like about the show, that would be even better. And this is a live show, so please ask your questions for Kyle to answer. You ready?
Yep.
All right, so first question is, what got you into real estate?
I got into real estate in 2005. I'm a native out here, born and raised, and graduated high school 2005. Knew that I did not want to go to college, and real estate seemed like the easiest thing to do.
You just skipped college.
Yeah.
You didn't even try?
Nope.
All right. So 2005, so that's before
the crash, tail end. I tell people it was like that moment on the roller coaster when you're on the very, very top and you don't really feel like you're going up anymore, but you haven't fully started the decline. And so that was October 2005 is when I got my license.
Gotcha. And you just did?
Buyer-seller. So spent the first 3 years of the business, buyer-seller transactions. You know, you were in the business around that time. And
2007.
That's when inventory started to really build up. So there were a lot of houses on the market. There were a lot of agents in the space because 2001 through 5, there was a big run-up. So everybody had their real estate license. Houses were trading super high, super fast. And so trailing that, we had a huge amount of inventory on the market, not as many buyers. Loans started to get harder to get during that period of time. And so, you know, I was 18, 19, 20 years old trying to convince people to use me as a real estate agent. And so, just doing buyers. And then I actually got into the REO game for a quick minute.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I had no idea. So I can't even picture you. You know, I've known you for some time, but I didn't know you back then.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even imagine you working with buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
You know, I had to do it. It was a means to an end. I knew I wasn't going to do it forever, but, you know, I've told people this before. I had a kid really young. If you want to find motivation, have a kid at 19. You really don't, you don't have an option. Failure isn't much of an option at that point.
Right.
You got to work, and you got to make it work, and you have to be successful.
Gotcha. Okay, so then 2005, you're licensed, you're doing the deals, and then you transition to REO?
Yeah, so I actually went and worked for an REO agent. So he had an account with Countrywide at the time, which was still a bank back then, and Chase and Bank of America.
Mm-hmm.
And
Was this Pete?
No, this was Steve Horn.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who has since moved on to Texas.
Right.
And so I came on. I was kind of his right-hand man, and that's what got me valuing properties. A lot of the people that are in the space today, they probably don't even know what the term BPO means. Mm-hmm. And I used to get to the office every day around 4:30 in the morning. I would print a list of 30 properties I was driving that day. I would drive all 30 properties, go back to the office, and then I would do a BPO on 30 different properties.
So for people that don't know what BPO is?
Broker price opinion.
Right. It's basically a cheap appraisal.
It was a cheap appraisal for the bank. I was getting $10 to $20 per BPO. So I was doing 5 to 6 days a week, 20 to 30 a day, and then listing the inventory with Steve. Mm-hmm. That's what really got me ready for the investment side of the business, because I was having to take a look at an asset in current condition and then compare it to the market, because every BPO you would have to have 3 comparable properties and value that asset for the bank, and then they would tell you if they approve the list price or not.
Right.
And that's really what got me set up for valuing real estate really fast.
So when were you doing the REO business?
9 and 10.
Okay.
Really late 08, 2009.
And this is before you were at the auctions?
Correct, before I was at the auctions.
Okay, so you're working with buyers and sellers, transition to listing properties for banks.
Yep.
And then
auctions.
Yeah,
the fun
because
games.
I know you were at the courthouse. You had a bid service and all that good stuff. So let's talk about the transition from going for listing bank properties to auctions.
Yeah. So Maricopa County, we were a non-judicial state with regards to foreclosure. So all the properties were getting foreclosed on at the courthouse. And back then we were seeing 80 sell to third parties. You know, sometimes a couple hundred a day were selling. So the way that it would work is that my company would publish a list of properties every single afternoon, sometime between 2 and 5 p.m. It was an Excel spreadsheet. We would publish a list of properties. We had some formulas built into Excel that would kind of prioritize the next day's sales for us. So there'd be, call it 300 properties going to sale on a Tuesday. Monday at 3 in the afternoon, my company would generate a list, and then it would pick the top 30 to 50. And then I would manually go through those 30 to 50 every single night between 6 and 9 p.m., put together my 10 to 15, and then we had property drivers that would go out the next morning between 6 and 9 in the morning, record videos, take pictures, get us a drive report is what we called it. And so those BPOs that I was doing really prepared me for the auction days.
Right.
And my company, we were not big by any means. We were buying 2 to 5 a week on average for about 3 years. There were some weeks we bought 7 or 8, but on average we were 2 to 5. But we weren't massive by any means.
What was the name of your company?
I actually ran it under my brokerage. Yeah, so the problem was a lot of bid services back then, they weren't licensed brokerages, but they were representing clients acquiring properties. So the Department of Real Estate actually came down on a lot of those companies.
Yeah.
So we decided just to open up a brokerage. So did that in early 2010.
Well, before then, you were over at Bill's office for Remax.
Yep.
I'm sure he was loving that.
Yeah. No, not at all. He encouraged me to start my own brokerage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because he was pretty much like, "Hey, get out of here," because we were running all the transactions through the brokerage, and they just weren't your typical file. It wasn't a agency disclosure and contract and inspection report.
Spuds,
Yeah,
disclosures.
No, it was just literally a bid receipt.
Yeah.
And so we ran it all through the brokerage, and it was all fine, and we never had any issues. It was just they were very fast-moving transactions. If people aren't familiar, you would bid on a property on a Tuesday, you had to pay for it on Wednesday. So it was just very fast-moving.
Yeah, so for you guys that don't know, when foreclosures are big, or when auctions are big, and auctions are still around today, but you got to do 10,000 non-refundable today, and the rest
the next day
by 5 p.m. tomorrow.
Yep.
Or you lost your $10,000.
Correct. Yeah. So you had to have a $10,000 cashier's check at the time of the winning bid. You had to sign it over to the trustee, and then figure out how to pay for the rest of it within 24 hours. And again, I was 23 years old at this point in time. Yeah.
So you were acquiring properties, or you were focused on the bid service? What was your focus at that time?
The most of what we bought were joint ventures. So I would go out and raise money, put together an entity, and I would then represent our entity acquiring properties. We did the bid service more as an ancillary business, but the main service was there for myself to buy and flip.
Gotcha. So because I know at that time, I want to say Posted Properties, and I can't remember some of the other big ones, but they were charging $2,000 to $5,000 a pop. So you're doing, I guess, 2 to 5 a week.
I was doing 2 to 5 a week. We kept 90% of the inventory though for ourselves to renovate and resell. Posted Properties, they were buying 30 a day at $2,000 to $5,000 a rip.
Yeah,
they had a massive operation, but most of what we bought were joint venture deals.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is prepping you for the wholesale world, or you were already wholesaling at this time?
I wouldn't say I was wholesaling at that time. There were plenty of times when you would buy a property on a Tuesday, and then the next day someone would approach you and say, "Hey, do you want to resell this property?" We did plenty of that. So it wasn't wholesaling in the sense that we were getting properties under contract or buying properties and then putting them out to the masses. It was more of the small circle of guys who were going to the auctions. Maybe someone didn't know a property was selling, or they were going to bid on it and they couldn't drive it in time, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it certainly started to build my network of investors for Arizona.
Gotcha. And around that time, you said when did you start going to auctions?
10, 11, 12. I bought my last property at auction in March 2013, and then I didn't buy anything actually until last month. I randomly bought one.
And so one of the things that we always heard about was there was a good old boys network. Like if you want to buy at the trustee sale, they will bid you up to get you out of there.
Yeah.
Did you run into that?
Uh-huh.
So talk about
did it happen to me, or did it
happen to you, or did you? Oh, I guess both. Did you do it to anybody else?
Yes, and yes. Yeah, because there were guys. Again, I didn't go there till pretty late in the game, but by the time I was there were guys that had been bidding there since the late '90s.
Yeah.
So they didn't like that there was a big rush of new people coming in. But by the time I entered, there were plenty of companies around that didn't happen too much. There were one-off scenarios where guys would bid each other up just for the sake of it, but it wasn't as big as it was. Probably in 2008, 2009 is when that was happening a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So and when you were bidding, did you stop because Blackstone came in Because that's when we stopped buying at the trustee sales. It was like
Yeah.
Blackstone was paying retail for everything in the
Yep.
options.
Yeah. So what we were doing was everything that we were buying was to buy and renovate. So then when you had these large funds that came in that were funded with hundreds of millions of dollars, they could bid you up on everything because they were buying them for rental purposes. So there just wasn't a spread out here anymore. At that point in time, me and my two business partners were trying to figure out, what direction do we want to go. And we decided to look at other states, but we didn't want to do anything where it would take a full day of travel. So essentially we were looking at Southern California, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico. At that point in time, I don't know if you remember or not, but Nevada actually issued a stay on foreclosures. So they
I don't
weren't.
remember that.
Yeah, they actually the state wasn't allowing any foreclosures. So Nevada was out. That was like a 2 to 3 year period where they weren't foreclosing. So we ended up going to Denver, Colorado, and we bought and resold about 60 homes in the Colorado market. And actually, I ended up bringing a couple different funds up to that market because what I noticed was we were still buying properties in Colorado in the high ones, so 160 to 220 range, as to where there weren't the buy and hold funds. So I was actually working with a buy and hold fund out of California. They were in 7 or 8 markets at the time, and they were pretty heavy buyers in Arizona, and I sold them quite a few properties.
Yeah.
And I was dealing with their regional manager. Brought them out to Colorado, and I was only in Colorado 3 to 5 days a month, but brought them out there, toured them around the 5 counties surrounding Denver, and at that point in time, I had a realtor who was working for me up there, a Keller Williams agent, and we convinced them to start to at least look at the market. And hey, I think the returns that you're going to get here are actually better than Phoenix, because in Phoenix there were 7 or 8 really large buyers out there or out here, and there weren't any in Denver. And every market that this specific fund went into, they set up a brokerage. So all their acquisitions and management were in-house. And somehow, I don't even really know how, but we convinced them to not set up a brokerage. And so between myself and my assistant in Scottsdale at the time and my one agent in Colorado, we represented this fund on just under 400 purchases in under 13, 14 months. Wow. And my agent in Colorado, he never got dressed. I mean, he was sitting in his pajamas all day writing offers. And
I mean, if it works.
It was a quick run, but it was a fun, good run.
Gotcha. So then when did you start actively wholesaling?
Direct to seller. Direct to seller in Arizona was 2014, so I think I entered that a little bit sooner than most people. It was late 2014. Really started it in 15. Didn't really know how we were going to get properties or what to do. I knew I didn't want to do pay-per-click advertising. At that point in time, I still owned the brokerage, so we were already using Mojo for our dialing system. So we thought, well, we're calling people trying to get their listings, doing circle prospecting. Maybe we can see if people want to just get a cash offer. Then in mid-2015, one of my agents said, hey, I've got a guy who I think would be a good sales rep. So I met up with him. He has door knocked and sold something, alarm systems, Dish Network, some TV service, what are those old people phones? I don't remember the name of the phone.
Like the bracelets?
No, those phones with the big keypads on them.
Oh, okay.
Jitterbugs.
Yeah.
He sold something in 42 states, and that was mid-2015. And I said, hey, I don't think anybody door knocks to try to buy real estate, so let's go that route. And he asked me, what would be successful, and I was like, honestly, man, if we buy one house a month, I think that would just be crazy.
Yeah.
And in the first year, we did 82. Wow. And he built his big thing was. These alarm companies and solar companies would fly him out to random city, Mississippi. He would build up a door knocking team for them. Then they'd fly him to Tennessee and just all over the place. So his specialty was kind of recruiting younger kids, getting them built up to do the door knocking system, going out door knocking and selling. And it was, in 15, 16, and 17, it was just, I was still dumbfounded that door knocking was getting us good deals.
Well, yeah, it's crazy because you and I, when I moved into my brokerage suite, I started studying homes real 2013, and I was like, all right, I found this perfect location, this is gonna be great. And then I move in and I look across, like, freaking Momentum's right over here.
Yeah.
My office is right next to Kyle's.
Yep.
It's like, oh, this sucks.
Lucky guy.
So, all right, so you were doing the door knocking thing in 2013, 14, 15, 16.
Still do it, but yeah.
Still do it.
Yeah.
And then, so you're tying these up. And that's when you were wholesaling them.
That is when I was wholesaling, yeah. And I was still flipping at the time too. I got really burnt out on flipping because between 2010 and 10 and 14, between Arizona and Colorado, we bought and renovated and sold over 600 houses. So now I can't stand flipping. It's just,
it should have been a science at
good.
that point.
Yeah, it was. It was still a headache. I mean, you're still managing crews. You're still dealing with contractors. And I just got burnt out on it. I just did a lot of it. So yeah, in 15, 16, 17, we were doing, still doing some flipping, but mainly wholesaling at that time.
Yeah. And you do something a little bit different because, we're all in the Phoenix market and we all do pretty well. But your fees is higher than most other people's fees.
Yeah.
What would you attribute that to?
We don't have a lot of competition on our doors. If somebody's calling a list of 90-day lates, you're probably not the only one, especially if you're in the Maricopa County. You're probably one of 100 people that are calling them. We door knock in neighborhoods that are, we buy a lot of really rough houses. I know some people say they buy rough houses. Like we deal with really, really rough stuff. We were on ABC one time for a property that we bought.
Yeah, Nate was telling me about that.
Yeah.
Kyle, local hero.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, they're really desperate for news.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the house was half burnt down. It was a meth house. The doors were held up with like boards and nails. It was really bad. So we buy really, really rough inventory.
So why were you on the news on that one? I never even got to watch the video.
So we were dealing with the seller. They ended up not selling us the house. They just kind of sat on it. I was actually watching like Game 5 of the NBA Finals. This was 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember when. And there was a news story, and it was about a property in the West Valley where the neighbors had actually set up cameras just focused on this one property because there were guys showing up with hammers breaking windows, dogs. There were, in one given day, I think there were like 47 cars that visited the house. There were people using the bathroom all over the front yard. And so the reason that these neighbors set up cameras was like, hey, we need to get these guys out of the neighborhood. So they got ABC 15 to do a story on it. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I've been in that house. And so I text my guy Andrew and I'm like, hey, watch the news, check this out. He's like, yeah, we've dealt with them. So I said, all right, call him. So the next morning we call and we're like, hey, here's the deal. Like, you've already been dealing with us. We're going to give you a good offer on the house. You essentially have to sell. Like, you're going to get forced to sell now. So we end up driving to the guy's rehab facility that he was at, bought that house, and then the neighbors were like so thankful. They ended up talking to ABC 15. They said, hey, this guy's buying the property. So then ABC 15 did a story on us about it. Yeah, it was kind of a funny one. All
right, so that's a rough house. What are some other examples?
Burn down properties. So we deal a lot with properties that have fires. We deal a lot. We actually get a lot of referrals from, the Arizona, I can't remember the department. I can't remember the name of it. Properties where you have someone living in the property and they shouldn't be. I mean, we've had houses where bathtubs are filled with animal feces. We've had properties where there's dozens of dead cats all over the place. So we deal a lot with that, a lot with burnt down properties. We deal with a lot of probate. So we get a lot of people who are out of state who will reach out to us and just say, hey, my mom was a hoarder. She passed away. Go look at the house. I mean, I've had houses so bad that I couldn't physically go in them. The smell was so bad. That's only happened a few times.
How did they reach out to you, right? Like, what were you doing where they reached out to you in a probate situation?
So the probate situations, those were direct. We were calling them direct. So on the probate ones. But we actually, this is one thing that was really weird to me too, is in the real estate industry on the retail side, like you work for referrals. Like you want referrals because a referral listing, there's not a lot of cost into that, right? We get a lot of referrals, like from, hey, you bought my neighbor's house. Hey, you bought my aunt's house. We were, I think, one of the first groups in Arizona that really pushed post-possessions. So we would buy a property and say, hey, you can live here for free for 60 days. Like, no charge, no holdback. We'll pay you all up front, and you can stay in the house for 60 days. I think that got us a lot of referrals. Now, I think a lot of guys now are doing the post-possession thing, but we don't charge for it.
Gotcha. Okay. So door knocking has been huge. And then at some point you started cold calling.
Yeah. So door knocking was how we we started off cold calling, then we transitioned to door knocking, then we transitioned to both. Cold calling has been really good. In the last couple of years, a lot of guys have gotten into the industry, so there's a lot more competition. But when we first started doing it, we were getting a lot of doors on calling. The big thing with cold calling is, a lot of people are worried about the message. They're worried about the script. My personal opinion, it's all timing. I really do think that it's just all timing. It kind of doesn't matter what you say. If you say something along the lines of like, hey, I'm going to pay cash for your house and I'll give you a free post-possession, that's really all the script needs to be. I think people are I think they're too worried about what should I say. You just got to be in front of enough people enough times.
Right.
We'll talk to people for years before they're ready to sell. And
Really?
And then we'll talk to other people consistently month after month after month, and then one of my guys will skip calling them for 3 months and they sold to somebody else. Like, well, they called that month, you didn't.
Yeah.
So I think it's a matter of just staying in front of people.
Yeah. And I remember there's one thing you shared with me before was that some of your biggest rips as well is when you're door knocking a foreclosure and then you're hitting that house that no one else is calling.
Yeah. So a lot of guys target knock. They'll go out to a neighborhood and say, all right, these are the 8 houses that we're going to buy based on these stress indicators. We will go out to a neighborhood. And when I say we, my door knocking team currently is 7 guys. So they'll go out to a neighborhood and they know of those 7 or 8 properties that everybody's going after, but they're literally door knocking the entire square mile. And when they door knock a square mile, they're also leaving a flyer at every single door. So a lot of times, like I was saying, we get properties where 10 guys might be targeting 123 Main Street. Nobody's going after 124 Main Street. We just happen to leave them a flyer or door knock them, and we buy the property.
Gotcha.
So that's one thing I'd recommend to people is, spot knocking is fine, but I think doing it the massive way is the way to go.
So if you're going to door knock a neighborhood or door knock these specific houses,
hit the whole neighborhood.
Just flyer. Are you door knocking the whole neighborhood or are you flyering the neighborhood?
Both. They'll do both.
They'll do both.
Yeah. So, the other thing too is that Arizona, June, July, August, September, it's 115 degrees out. Like nobody's door knocking. So my guys will go out and door knock, and I truly think that's why we get good deals. Is a lot of guys are just it's too hot to door knock. All right, that's fine.
You guys give them like ice packs like at Chick-fil-A?
We actually have those. They're these towel rag things that like stay super cold for hours on end. But yeah, no joke. They'll wrap their neck in it.
It's the ones you see like when you're watching like ESPN late at night.
Golf guys. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so cool. What were some, we talked about your journey from where you were until we got to where you are today. What were some struggles along the way?
Struggles along the way. I think, real estate's been good for the last 4 years. It's pretty much been a hockey stick curve up. I think what people need to realize is that the market can change very quick.
Yeah.
Struggling in 6, 7, 8, 9 was, our inventory. I think it hit like 50,000 active listings at one point in time.
We were at 56,000 and change.
Right.
Like I think in 2009.
Yeah.
So when I bought my house in 2006, there were literally 2,300 houses for sale, right, in the MLS.
Yep.
And then that quickly changed. And then we went to the other end of the spectrum where there were 56,000 homes.
Yeah.
For sale in MLS.
So, the struggle back then was you would have one buyer and you were showing them 60 houses because there were just more and more inventory. It just kept building up. So that was a big struggle. But I think just transitioning, I think people need to be ready to transition on a dime. I think you have to be. When times are good, people kind of forget about the bad times. But I'm very fortunate. I'm grateful that I got into the industry when it was tanking because I think if I would have, a lot of people that got in 2003, they were out by 6.
There were so many people. I got in 2007. There were so many people that were leaving.
Yeah.
Like you could just see them walking by you as you're walking in.
And I think in the last 12 to 24 months we've started seeing what we were seeing in 2003, which is just this massive influx of agents, which is like, hey, this is super easy. And same with wholesalers, it's super easy, and it has been. It's been very, very easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of the struggles were just transitioning from doing the REO business, and then that dried up. There were just kind of no more REOs. And then it was the trustee sales, and then you had all of these large funds that came in. It was like, well, I'm not going to buy anything here.
Yeah, that's a shift.
And then it was, all right, we're going to Colorado, and then same thing, a lot of the funds went there. And then it was, so it was just kind of always pivoting and being aware that whatever you're doing right now probably isn't going to last forever.
No, it's definitely not going to last. And that's one of the big takeaways for me, and I've always been mindful of, right, when I got licensed in 2007, was that I got in right around the time where RE/MAX 2000 just closed their doors.
Yep.
Right? And we were talking 7 locations, 10 locations, whatever it was,
Hundreds
and
of
you
agents.
showed up, and doors were chained.
Yep.
Title companies were chained.
Yep.
Right? You had houses that someone had bought or got qualified for the loan, and money was at title, and then it was pulled back.
Yep. Wasn't closing. Yep.
Wasn't closing.
Commission checks bouncing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I have gone through that crap. So
Yeah.
you think that some of these guys that are having a really good time right now may not be prepared.
I would change it from may not, and they're for sure not.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a crash like what we saw before.
We're definitely not going to see a crash.
Every
like
recession's different. We're not going to see a crash like that. It is going to change.
Yeah.
And I just think a lot of the guys that got into it in the last 24 months, I mean, I deal with some wholesalers that they don't know how to value real estate, but they just know that if they get something under contract somewhere in this price range, they're probably going to be able to make some money on it. And that's just not a sustainable business.
Yeah.
It's not.
So somewhere along the way, we got connected in a mastermind with a title company in Tempe. And we would talk about, real estate, whatever. And you're like, hey, I've got this other idea, this other thing I'm working on. Yeah. I was like, that's just another distraction.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that distraction.
Yeah.
How's that worked out?
Good. So in 2010, Arizona passed the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act. The governor immediately sued the state to put a stay on it. And then in 2011, I was actually at my gym at the time, and I was talking to a guy, and he was an attorney, and I sat down with him just to talk just about some business stuff, and I said, I really want to get into marijuana. I don't really know anything about it, but I really want to get into it. And he was like, well, I'm putting together a group. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm all in. Met with some of the other partners, or not even partners at the time, just the guys that were like kind of interested, and so end of 2011, we decided, hey, let's make a run at this thing, and we applied for a few licenses in Arizona. We tried to get 3, we got 2. And then opened up one of them in Tempe and just kind of slowly grew that. And that company actually went public a year ago last week. So it's been public for just over 12 months now. And it's grown to be one of the largest, they're called MSOs, multi-state operators, in the nation. Yeah. They have over 200 licenses. I'm not involved with the operations anymore. I haven't been since early 2017, but I was pretty heavily involved in 11 through 15. I was very involved. So I was traveling between here in Nevada because we expanded Nevada. While I was still involved, we expanded from Arizona, Nevada, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and then in 2017, we took over another company. At that point in time, most of the original founders kind of stepped out. There were about 3 guys that still stayed involved with it. The only person who's an original founder that's still there is a CEO. Yeah. But yeah, they've since mid-2017, it's grown just massively.
Yeah, so that distraction worked out pretty well in your favor.
It did.
Wish I had accepted your offer to invest in it.
Yeah. It was a different climate back then. I mean, the DEA was still busting doors down. The outlook on it from the government back then was very different than it is now. So we were, back then, even though we were abiding by state laws, there were still federal laws that obviously supersede the state laws that, were acting within Arizona guidelines, still would have put us in prison for a minimum of 20 years. Yeah. And that was the decisions we had to make. We sat at tables and said, are we going to do this? And we decided to, and it paid off.
Well, I remember like some of that conflict, right? Because when they passed that legislation, I mean, I had a client who was trying to buy a warehouse so he can grow. Yeah. And I remember getting involved in it. I was like, man, I hope we get this license, because just me selling that warehouse alone, that's a $30,000 commission check. Yeah. But see, a lot of industries, or there was a lot of good things economically happening.
Oh yeah, huge.
because
of the industry.
Yeah,
huge. But I mean, we couldn't even find landowners and building owners that would want to work with us, because
that's why you had to buy them.
Yeah, because at that point in time, even if you were just the landlord renting, you were renting to a federally illegal business. I mean, right. And even to this day, as we sit here in 2019, it is federally illegal what we do. But right. The government's kind of turned an eye to it.
I remember every time we were looking at leases, it was like, hey, will they be okay with this? And we would ask them, and the answer was always no.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And then the ones that would, it was like, all right, yeah, market rent's $3 a foot. Yeah, you can have it for $15 a foot. Like, all right, well, it's our only option, so here we go.
Yeah. So what were some lessons you learned along the way in building that could apply to your business today?
In real estate, I think for the most part, their real estate agents aren't known as the best business owners. There are some great business owners in the space, but I'd say for the masses, they're not really business owners. Right. I didn't go to college, so I just kind of learned along the way. Going with those guys, I mean, we had guys that own commercial construction companies, law firms. So I was the youngest in the group by a decade. So I got to learn from a lot of guys who had built successful businesses, and we approached it not as like, hey, let's go get high and try to sell weed. It was like, all right, we want to build this thing to be a massive business, and we were looking at it as like the Coors business coming out of Prohibition. You know, it was like, all right, it's still kind of illegal, but if we do this as a business, fast forward a couple years, and this could be pretty legitimate. So learned a lot about growth, learned a lot about dealing with partners, because there were 5 of us originally. I'd say that one of the biggest things I learned was pick your lane and stay in your lane. You know, a lot of times within partnerships and organizations, you have a lot of bleed over. Like, I'm going to do this today and that tomorrow and this today, and then your partner's doing this today and that tomorrow. But we were really big on like, hey, stay in your lane. Like, trust your partners, trust your employees. They're going to stay in their lane. You stay in your lane. That was one of the biggest takeaways I had. Gotcha.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it was this little thing. You kind of got a couple of guys together. Let's start this. It was Harvest, right? And now it's one of the top multi-state operators.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're public, millions of dollars.
Hundreds of
millions of dollars.
Yeah.
How in the world do you stay motivated?
I got to stay busy. You know, I grew up in real estate. My mom's a real estate agent.
Yeah.
I've been in it since I was 18 years old. It's everything that I've ever known. So it would be silly for me to leave real estate, especially on the investment side of it. You know, you can build really, really great wealth through real estate.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for me to leave. I still like it. You know, I like the guys I work with a lot, and I'm a deal junkie. Like, I love doing deals.
Well, because you could just take the money, park it. You could park it in, you know, a safe fund, make 6 to 8%. You could be a hard money lender, making 12 to 18%.
Yeah.
But you're still out there hustling.
Yeah, and I kind of do all those. So I do lend, I do buy rentals, I'll flip from time to time. It's more of a joint venture thing. So now, instead of me being the guy trying to raise the money and go in and I go do the project, I'm more JVing with guys and, hey, I'll put up the money, you go manage the project.
Yeah.
But yeah, we still wholesale. I have my wholesale operation there because I really like the guys that I work with. You know, 3 of the guys have been with me for 4 years, so I want to make sure they stay successful. But it's also there to service me for buying rental properties, and for me and my joint venture partners to buy and flip properties. So I would never let it go away. It would be silly. Like, I know I always want to buy real estate. Right now, I get the deals originated, and I'm the filter. Why would I go away? You know, if I just started buying from other wholesalers, I'm essentially paying what I could be getting it under contract for if I ran the operation myself, plus their fee,
plus the
$8,000 to $12,000. Yeah, so it doesn't make sense for me to turn it off.
Right. So for you right now, you're just acquiring properties, and as long as it can get you good deals that give you a decent ROI.
Yeah. Yep.
Happy to keep doing that.
Yep.
And one of the things that we've talked about before was, so you said 3 guys that have been with you for a while. How many acquisition guys do you have?
Right now, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7.
7.
Yeah.
And so a conversation that you and I have had, over lunch, is that a lot of guys right now, the question of compensation comes up every once in a while, right? I think we pay our guys really well at 20%. People tell me we're paying our guys too much, and you pay way more than that.
Way more, yeah.
Talk to me about that.
The guy that will make the lowest amount for me, and these are like, we're onboarding you. You don't know what escrow means. They'll be between 20 and 25%. My lead guy, he'll be between 45 and 50%. My other couple guys that have been with me for a while, they are going to be between 30 and 40%.
Okay.
Just like in real estate, when you have a team with buyer's agents move constantly. Like, you look at the Department of Real Estate website, somebody's been with 14 brokerages at 8 to 12 month spans, because they're always just looking for, can I make 5% more? Can I make 5% more? And I see that in the wholesale industry. Like, we get guys that'll call us and say, hey, I've been working for so-and-so. Do you want me to come over? So I looked at it as, do I pay too much? I mean, I don't think I pay too much. The industry thinks I pay too much, and that's fine. Right. But I also have 3 guys who've been with me for 3 to 4 years who they'd take a bullet for me.
Yeah.
And at times they might have to.
Well, with the houses you're door knocking.
But they've been with me forever. They're loyal. They love what they do. And yeah.
So what does the rest of your organization look like?
Rest of the organization, So I was talking about earlier, we do a lot of door knocking and a lot of cold calling. About a year and a half ago, I was approached by a guy who became a good buddy of mine, and he was a systems guy. He spent a decade in the U.S. Air Force, flew F-16s, really smart guy. And he kind of came in and he was wanting to invest in real estate and start to flip houses, and he noticed a big disconnect in technology in the real estate space. And so he came to me and pretty much said, hey, how does your office work? And at that time, I had a door knocking app that I was using, not one that I owned, just one that we were paying for. I had a cold calling system, and then we had a way of getting contact data. And the person that ran that was a girl named Cheyenne. And Cheyenne was a $14 an hour employee. And she would sit there and she would extract out all the doors we were hitting and building lists and then formatting those lists and taking them to the skip tracing company and getting contact data and then getting that list back and then dividing the list up, putting it into the dialers and tracking everything. And Will came to me and he said, hey, you give me 3 weeks, we're going to fire Cheyenne. I said, all right, go for it. And so he built out a system that every day at 1 p.m., it would automatically extract out every door that my guys had hit and identified that day, automatically push them to the skip tracing company, get the contact information, and then push it to our dialer. And so we essentially removed human interaction from data and from connecting all these softwares. And I'm like, all right, cool, I'm good with it. And he built it out in a way that it would reprioritize calls every single day. So it would reprioritize it based on when it was generated and who generated it. And so we did that, and that was, like I said, mid-2018. And in March of this year, I was talking with him. I'm like, I think this could actually be like a consumer-facing business. I think this is something that we should, see if other people are interested in doing. He's like, all right, yeah, let's go for it. And I said, well, you got to build me a website, because I'm not a tech guy. I'm like, so I understand how it works, kind of high level, but I need you to build me a website so I can point people and say, here, this thing works.
Yeah.
And through that, we ended up building a data aggregation service and a data aggregation pipeline that connects different real estate softwares through data. And so it's now nationwide. We have an on-prem database of 158 million properties in the United States, and it makes live calls. So rather than some of these other companies where you have to send them a list and then wait, 6 to 24 hours to get your list back. It's all live. So, for instance, we can take a list of 1,000 property addresses with or without ownership information, and you're going to have that list back in 2 to 4 minutes with contact data.
What does on-prem mean?
On-prem means that we don't go to an outside service for it. So on-premises. So it's our internal database.
Gotcha.
That refreshes every other week. So we have new ownership information. We have a vacancy database. So it actually updates every month with vacant properties. We have an absentee owner database. So someone can go to the system right now and say, I want vacant properties in this zip code, and it's going to generate that list for you with contact data.
Gotcha. Yeah, Cheyenne. So you got the acquisition guys. You got Cheyenne. Will's basically automating this. Dispositions. I mean, I know you're keeping some of these. How are you moving the rest?
Two of the guys in my office, they do all the dispositions.
Okay.
So for me personally, I don't touch any acquisition or any disposition. Once it's under contract, I'll take a look at it. I'll say, hey, I think it's worth X. I think we can move it for this price.
So you're still evaluating it?
I will value it once we have the contract. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So once we have the contract, I'll value the property. I'll tell them where I think we can move it at based on the condition and the value, or I'll tell them, hey, I'm going to buy this one.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But then 2 guys in my office, they build the blasts, they reach out to all the investors, they send the blast out, they field all the calls, they manage the whole disposition.
Any virtual assistants?
No.
No.
Not on the real estate business.
And then as far as your acquisition guys, we've talked about this before. Hiring and keeping inside salespeople have been historically a challenge, and I know a lot of people have that challenge. Do you still have that challenge given what you pay, or you kind of don't have that challenge?
No, you overpay them and they stay.
Yeah.
We have a fun office. It's a warehouse. So we have a craps table. We have 2 TVs. We have an Xbox.
You have a craps table?
Yeah, we have a ping pong table. So it's a fun environment. We buy them lunch every couple days, and it's a fun environment. But they work really hard.
Yeah.
And they get paid really well. Most of the acquisition guys in their low 20s, they're going to make 40, 50, 60 grand a year.
Right.
Two of the guys in the office make over 100. One guy makes over 200, and no college degree. It's not a 9 to 5. If they want to go on vacation, they go on vacation. If they want to take a day off, they take a day off.
No drug testing.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about door knocking,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked about cold calling.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing anything else?
We do mailers from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
We will, but again, that's pretty specifically targeted. So we'll typically door knock for 3 months, and then all the properties that we identified as being bad properties in our office, the tag's called POS. So every quarter we mail all the POS properties. So they get hit by door knocking, calling, and then in the mail.
Gotcha. And we have a lot of friends, right, in the business. Like I mentioned earlier, you've been in the business a long time. I've been in the business a long time. So we have a lot of friends in the traditional real estate side,
Mm-hmm.
right, in that community. But you've made a decision to let your license go.
Yeah, I went inactive.
Yeah. So talk about the decision. Why'd you do that?
I went inactive either 2 or 3 years ago. I don't remember. I think just over 2 years ago. I wasn't using it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And as a licensed agent in Arizona, you have to make specific disclosures when you're buying a property, when you're selling a property. I've dealt with the Department of Real Estate on wholesaling. They don't love the industry by any means. And I think a lot of agents, I had an agent in my office a week or two ago who's wholesaling, and I was talking to him about his license, and on all of his contracts, he's not disclosing that he's a licensed agent. Dude, you gotta do that. And so it was just a matter of, is it bringing me any value versus the liability? Mm-hmm. And I own a brokerage, so I don't need to have my license. If I buy a property that I want to sell, I have agents. My wife has a real estate license, so there wasn't a reason for me to have it. Maybe I'll show a 10 in a house from time to time or something for a couple $100 and I'll reactivate it. But
right.
Yeah, I just didn't need it.
Are there any important metrics with the way you run your business that you feel are specific to you, or?
I'd say they're probably the same that everybody does. How many calls per day are your guys making? How many contacts per day? How many contacts per contract? How many contracts per closing? So I would think that most guys are looking at the same stuff I'm looking at. Nothing crazy important.
So Herman Soares wants to know, what's your door knocking script when you're in front of the homeowners?
Yeah, so we used to door knock and say, hey, do you want a cash offer on your house? That wasn't the best. What seems to work, what seems to actually work really well is you knock on a house and say, hey, my name's whatever. So Andrew, for instance, he'll go out. Hey, my name's Andrew. I know you don't want to sell your house. You clearly don't need to sell your house. And then he'll point to somebody across the street. Do you know would they want a cash offer? And they'll kind of start it that way. And what people don't realize, they're just snaking around the neighborhood, so they're hitting every single house anyways. But it's just simply like, hey, I know you don't want a cash offer for your house. You don't need to sell your house. Do you know if they would want a cash offer? Here's what we paid for your neighbor's house. We give them this post-possession. Do you think they would be interested in that? And that's been our best go.
That's just like an investor pitch.
Yeah, that's been our best go.
I mean, I know you're not probably interested in investing, but do you know anyone else is looking to make 7% ROI?
Yeah.
It's like, no, I'm that guy.
Yeah.
I want to make 7% ROI.
Exactly. So yeah, that's been the best approach that we've had. Not, hey, will you sell me your house? I'm at your house. But to be honest with you too, is we talk to a lot of people who will tell us, we get letters, we get calls, we get texts, but the fact that you were actually here, sometimes people think like you drove out just to meet them, like you drove out just to their house to talk to them about buying their house. So I think it shows a little bit more commitment. Again, in Arizona, it's super easy to send a mailer. It's very easy to call. It's very easy to text. When it's 115 degrees out, there's nobody else in the neighborhood door knocking. We never see other people door knocking for real estate. So when you're out there, it shows a level of commitment. Like, hey, I'm here right now. I'm not just sending you a text. I'm interested in your house, this house that I'm at. I think it shows more commitment.
Gotcha. And so when you're door knocking, right, you're out on the street today, you're door knocking. Are you trying to lock it up right then and there, or are you trying to set up another appointment for someone else to come in?
Depends on who's on the door specifically. Our guys will all stay within the square mile. I only have one guy in the office who gets contracts. I have 3 guys who go on appointments. So if it's one of the appointment guys, they'll walk in the house and do the appointment. If it's one of the lower level sales guys, they'll be at whatever address and street, and they'll reach out to one of the other guys and say, hey, this person wants you to meet with them, and they'll go over there.
Okay, so let's just say you got the guy that's ready to lock it up, right? So he knocks on the door, the homeowner lets him in. What's some of the craziest things he's ever seen?
Craziest things we've ever seen. The meth house was really interesting because, they weren't thinking right. There was a fire in the kitchen. You had one person in the kitchen with a rake, and they were raking garbage out of the kitchen. And then you had somebody else, and they had a broom, and they were cleaning. So both people thought they were cleaning. They were back to back. They were literally hockey pucking trash back to each other. And so we were sitting there like, this can't be real right now. That was one of the craziest. The dead cats was pretty crazy. One house, I don't know how nasty you want me to get. One house had buckets of feces, human feces, so they weren't using the toilets, so they were just buckets everywhere. One of your agents bought that house from me, Elman.
Love Elman.
Yeah. Buckets of feces. We've had.
Did that convey when you sold it to Elman?
Oh, yeah, we had it. Yeah, we gave that to Elman. Bathtub full of animal feces. Needles. I mean, obviously, lots of drugs. We've seen some that were grow houses where people tried to hide what they were growing. Yeah, we've seen just about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like you can smell it or anything.
No, exactly.
And then Mario Fernandez wants to know, how are you paying the door knockers?
They're all commission guys. All of them are commission.
So same thing.
Yep.
20 to 40% depending on their experience.
Who they are, experience, and what they do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, if you could just elaborate, your deal flow, how many deals are you doing a month right now?
On average, we're between 6 and 8, 6 to 10, because we'll pick some off as rentals or flips personally. But as far as
like your margins, like I said earlier, are kind of stupid, right? Way higher than ours.
Yeah.
So monthly, what are you guys bringing in revenue?
We have, since 2016, we've always, on an annual basis, we've always been over 7 figures. So, we've had some months in the past where we've been in the 200 range, but on average, we're between 80 and 100.
Yeah. And I kind of mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show, you've been kind of quiet.
Yeah.
You've always stayed under the radar.
Yeah. I'm the wholesaler nobody knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? What's the purpose? I mean, I only know because we're connected.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I'm not a big self-promoter. I'm not a big social media guy. I'm on social media, but, I don't talk about deal flow. And
no one would know looking at your Facebook.
Yeah.
That you're even in real estate, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I know. One thing, loose lips sink ships.
Yeah.
That's one thing. One thing I did learn from the auction days is that we had a really good thing going at the auctions. There weren't a lot of guys who were doing it. Even when there were 30 companies down there, that really wasn't a lot. And then there was a TV show on Discovery, and it was, what was it? Property Wars.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that ruined. We had a really good, we had a fishing hole with a lot of fish, and not a lot of people knew about the fishing hole.
Yeah.
And I've seen kind of the same thing happen on the investment side of real estate, is that in 2014-15, nobody was doing the direct-to-seller thing. And so for me, I looked at it as I know about this thing that works really well. Why am I going to go broadcast it?
Yeah.
Well, in 2017, 18, 19, everybody else started broadcasting it. So
it's a little different.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different now.
Yeah.
So then, since you're door knocking and cold calling and just mailing every once in a while, what is your monthly overhead?
Monthly overhead's pretty low because I obviously have an office, but I don't have salaries. I'm not paying guys a lot of salaries. So on an average basis, we're about $7,000 a month. Now, obviously, if we do a mailer, it's going to go up significantly. But yeah, we're right around $7,000 a month.
That's really low.
And that, 20% of that's our dialing, because we have I think we have 8 seats, triple line dialers. Yeah.
Which program are you using right now for dialing?
Mojo.
You went back to Mojo?
Yeah, so I was using 5.9 for just over a year. 5.9 is really good if you have a lot of different complications that you want to build into it, and we did, and it wasn't too robust. I think what we were trying to do was too robust for 5.9, because it was dealing with how sellers were acting on the phone, and it would reprioritize calls based on that. It would reprioritize calls based on ring time, and it was just, I think it was just too much, and I just got to the point where I was like, all right, let's just dumb it down, go back to Mojo.
All right. Guys, remember, it's a live show, so ask your questions. Kyle's happy to answer all your questions. So Murray wants to know, have there been houses you go to with a partner, or do you always, or just alone?
On the appointments?
I guess probably the question more is along the lines of, are there houses that you for sure are bringing a partner with you?
Now, not so much, just because I refuse to go on appointments.
Well, I guess not you.
Yeah.
But your team, do you have a buddy system?
Typically, yeah. So, and the way that we do it right now is if we have an appointment in a neighborhood at 1:30 today, that's where the whole group's going to knock.
Yeah.
Usually only one guy goes inside of the appointment, but I mean, there were plenty of times where we no chance one person would have gone into the house.
Yeah.
I've actually, one story I forgot, that there was a property in Tempe where, I do jujitsu. And in jiu-jitsu, I learned there are things that are going to hurt, and then there are things that are going to kill you, and you just have to put up with the things that are going to hurt. And I remember I walked into the house, and I kind of got in there, and the owner was, I'm short, I'm 5'7". The owner was a big guy, and I started walking around the house, and I remember thinking, you're going to get hit. You're going to get hit hard. You're going to have to get out of the house. You need to find a way out of the house. And I was in that house by myself, actually.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff about the house that I probably can't talk about, but it was a really funny situation. We ended up buying it.
Anything weird happened? Did you get hit?
I did not get hit. There were a lot of weird things in the house. I mean, you could feel evil. There was a room in the garage that was built out that was all blacked out with weird masks.
I think you sent me photos of this house.
There were things mounted on walls.
Yeah,
it was that house. I was, I remember thinking all right, you're gonna get hit. Just deal with it and get out.
So there have been, I haven't done as much volume as all those other guys have been in the show, but there are 2 different houses I've been at. One where I was walking by and I was like, okay, there's this rusty hammer just sitting here by itself for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, well, hopefully nothing crazy happens with this rusty hammer because the guy is kind of not all there.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, well, I got to keep my head in a swivel.
Yeah.
Just in case. And nothing weird happened, but it's no one knows where I'm at.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Right.
We have a shared calendar. My wife was on it back in the day because it was all right, we need to know where everybody is at every point in time. Because there were houses that were rough.
Yeah.
I mean, rough.
And then I had another one where the house was worth about $245, and the guy wanted $245, which is fine, whatever. It's a tough negotiation.
Yeah.
But he was a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And he wasn't taking no for an answer.
Yeah.
It's you're paying $245 for this. I was like, I'm not paying $245 for this house.
Hey, we moved. Yeah. I bought us a house.
But I mean, he was flexing in the appointment. I was like, man, if this guy wants to go to town, I can't do anything.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Haven't had any of those. I don't think.
He was really assertive.
Yeah.
Koa wants to know your initial offer for the home about the neighbor's house.
Uh-huh.
So when you say, I'm thinking about buying that house.
Yeah.
We paid this much. What are you telling those homeowners?
So we use a system called Batch Geo, and Batch Geo is a map system. And so what we do is every month we upload an Excel spreadsheet into that, and it tracks all of our purchases across Maricopa County with address, purchase price, square footage, year build, bunch of specs on the property. And so when my guys door knock a neighborhood, they actually have reference points because here are houses that we bought, and they just open it on their iPhones.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah. And so what they'll do is I'm talking to Steve saying, hey, I want to buy that house. I think, and the way that they'll play it is they'll play the homeowner off themselves. So hey, I'm standing in front of a 1,600 square foot house. Well, I know that in the neighborhood I paid this for another 1,600 square foot house. So they'll say, hey, Steve, that house looks like it's 1,600 square feet. Here's what we think we would pay. Here's the condition of one we just bought. And that's kind of the conversation starter.
Oh, gotcha. So you just base it off what you guys have bought it for. It has nothing to do with percentages. Has nothing to do with ARVs.
I don't do percentages. Yeah, I mean it'll be based off ARV a little bit, but what have we bought in the area? What are other cash offers paying for in the area? What's going for retail in the neighborhood? What could this rent for?
So you probably also know what you can sell it for as well.
Yeah. The other thing too is that we go on way less appointments than most wholesalers. In a given month, we're not going on 20 appointments.
Yeah.
I know some guys that they're going on 3 to 5 appointments a day. I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm not a hard worker. I'm not going to work hard. I'm not going to. So I have to be very, very efficient, and I have to work really smart because I am not going to work hard.
Yeah.
We'll go on less than 20 appointments a month, but we'll buy, again, 6 to 8 on average.
Do you guys have a targeted fee?
No. I mean, I at times I look at deals that come in because, again, I don't sign the contracts and I don't deal with the disposition. So there are times where I'm like, you guys, this was a $1,200 assignment fee. This is not worth the time, the risk. What are you guys doing? But, it's good for the guys in the office to do.
Yeah.
But, targeted fee, I'd like to be at least $8,000 just based on, the amount of time that goes into it and getting it and everything like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, there have been times where I'm like, you guys, we're losing money buying this house. What are you doing?
Sean O'Rourke wants to know, how are you recruiting your door knockers?
Yeah, I'll just be totally honest with you. Mormons right out of high school, they go and they door knock for 2 years, and we have right now in the office, of the 7 guys, either 3 or 4 of them are LDS because they spent 2 years door knocking. And the big thing with door knocking, the reason why a lot of people don't want to do it is fear of rejection. And it's like, well, all right, you're going to door knock somebody's house. Worst case scenario, they tell you to leave, and then you just go to the next house. Well, right. Mormons who are door knocking for 2 years, they don't have that fear of rejection.
Yeah.
So we've done really well with that. And then just, younger guys who are looking to be more on the entrepreneur side of business, they don't want to be an hourly employee. They go out and door knock.
So I don't know how to say this without being offensive.
I don't get offended.
How are LDS people working for you?
How are LDS people working for me? I have a lot of people who were raised Mormon and who went on their mission and maybe don't go to church every week anymore.
Really?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So these are like Jack Mormons?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And then Kenny Wright wants to know, are you letting your team write the contract or do they set the appointment, you go back with them and do the contract?
I don't go. I have one guy in the office who is able to get the contract signed. So 3 guys are allowed to go on appointments. 1 guy is allowed to get the contract signed.
And Matt Beard is asking about felons.
Felons? What about them?
I don't know. He just says felons.
The ones who work for me or the ones who... do I have any felons who work for me? I don't have anybody with a felony, so I don't have any felons.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Kenny wants to know, how do you prospect for Mormons who finished their 2-year service?
There's actually a website where you can post jobs. It's specific to the Mormon Church. I can't remember what it is. Andrew runs it for me. But you can actually, it's like a Craigslist. You can post job ads.
It's almost like, what's that? Like Farm Girls Only? Is that what it is?
Yeah, something like that.
It's
Farm
like
Girls
this.
Only. Yeah.
For LDS.
Yeah, J-Date. That's really what it is. So we post on there. And then they're still connected in the Mormon community. So they, they have family friends who, they know.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So we talked about this earlier, and maybe elaborate this a little bit more. So we've seen the shifts, we've seen the turns. Are you doing anything right now to prepare for the next shift?
I've been doing it for the last year and a half because we used to I used to pay dialers. At one point in time, we had 19 guys in the office. 10 of them were getting paid hourly to dial. I used to do mailers every single month. I used to do text campaigns. And in 2019, we did away with all of that because I think it's very important right now that guys stay lean.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how fast the market can change. 90 days may not sound fast, but the problem is, as it's changing, a lot of people throw more money at the problem. And they're like, well, all right, I just got to do more marketing. I got to spend more here. And then the revenue isn't there from it. And 3 months down the road, it's like, all right, now I'm out of money and the market's changed. I don't know what to do. So staying lean, I keep my overhead super low. Because I think that a lot of investors and wholesalers have entered the space. I think there's a lot more competition, and I think that it's going to stay the same. I think there's going to be a lot more competition coming into the market in 20. We're staying lean.
Right.
And I always stay lean. November, December, January, I don't spend a lot of money anyways, but I'll kind of see what the market's looking like in December and January, and then kind of reassess and go from there.
Gotcha. And then we're talking about skipping, data and so on. So I think I want to say maybe 7 years ago, we were talking about LexisNexis and all this stuff. So right now, what are you doing to get data?
So essentially, the program that Will built for my office internally is what we've brought to consumers now. So it's a nationwide product. We have people using it currently in 34 states. Like I said, we have every parcel in the United States. So we provide property data for free whenever you make a call to us. The company is called IVRE Data, and it's unique in that you don't have to have ownership information. It's unique in how you can make queries to the system. So for instance, any cell phone can send a text message with a property address to us, and within 2 to 3 seconds, you're getting a return with who owns that address, phone numbers, email addresses. It's incredibly efficient in how it runs batch files. So again, a list of 1,000 addresses will take 2 to 3 minutes to get that back. And we're built to integrate into businesses. We're not just a service that's reselling data and giving you back an Excel spreadsheet. We can push to any endpoint you want. So we can direct it directly to Mojo, for instance. So if somebody uploads a list through us, 3 minutes later, it's in their Mojo account with contact data.
Yeah.
it's also really nice because you don't have to format lists. So we can get a list where you can leave in square footage and year built and sale history, and our list will find the property address somewhere in your file, run it for contact data and ownership, push it back there with all of your data still in there, and send it to any endpoint that you want.
Yeah. And I think that's maybe I want to emphasize it again. So you're saying that if they upload a list, once that list is skipped, it can go right into Mojo.
Direct into Mojo. Yeah. So yeah, you bring us a list, 1,000 addresses, 2 to 4 minutes later, that is in your Mojo account. So it's a really efficient system.
It's definitely different.
Yeah.
What is your biggest struggle right now?
Biggest struggle right now, again, assessing what 20 is going to look like. It kind of seems like there's a little bit of shift in the market right now, but I don't know what it is. I say, this time of year, it's always, what's next year going to look like. So
very much so. It's always what's going to happen in January.
Yeah.
We got this pent up supply, pent up demand.
Yep.
And we don't know which one's going to win.
Yeah. And, I'd say, one of the biggest struggles that we see in Maricopa County, at least, and I talk with other guys who I respect in the industry, is you're seeing a lot of guys who are putting properties under contract in a way that they shouldn't be. So I'd say that's one of the biggest struggles is that, wholesalers, unfortunately and fortunately, I guess, is it's unregulated. There's no department. There's no government looking down on it saying, hey, you can and can't do these things. So what I've noticed in the last year or so is a lot of guys are putting homeowners under contract at an unrealistically high price, and then they are locking that homeowner into that contract through a recording against the property. And then, a property worth $200, maybe they put it under contract for $190, knowing that nobody's going to pay above $150 for it. And then we'll deal with the seller and say, hey, we'll pay that $150 for it. And then the seller finds out that they've been locked into this contract they can't get out of. And so I've seen people go into foreclosure because of that. So I'd say the biggest struggle is that, unfortunately, it's such an unregulated industry that a lot of guys have gotten into it, and they're very shady, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I think that's a problem probably in multiple states, but definitely something that's come up multiple times. In fact, there was a rant by one of our friends not too long ago on Instagram about that. So what do you think is the fix for that?
What do I think the fix is? I think that any time that someone sees that happening, I would go to the Attorney General. So I would make a complaint to the Attorney General. I would also make a complaint to the Department of Real Estate. I think rant has a negative connotation to it. I think what he talked about was, I think it needs to be talked about more. And I think the people who are doing this should be named. And I think that you should go to the Attorney General's office because we've dealt with homeowners who, and that property specifically, it almost got foreclosed on. I mean, this lady was legitimately going to lose her house. Probably the biggest asset she's ever going to have in her entire life. She's about to lose it to foreclosure because of two guys who were screwing her over and misleading her on what she can possibly do with her property. And I don't even know the outcome of that deal anymore. I don't know what's happened with it. But, these guys are, in my opinion, I think it's shady. I think anytime that you're recording an instrument against a property and a homeowner where the homeowner doesn't fully understand what's going on, I think put them in jail.
I think put them in jail, too. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
What is your superpower?
What is my superpower? I'm a survivor. Yeah, I'm a survivor. I'd say that's my superpower.
You want to talk more about that?
I've been through a lot of different markets. I've been through changing markets. I've been in markets where in 2006, 7, 8, like people don't realize it unless you were there. There were agents who were seasoned, 20 years in the industry, going bankrupt.
Yeah.
So I think that my talent or skill is just knowing how to survive and hopefully thrive in any type of market. Even
our friend Brent Daniels, right? He personally guaranteed a very long lease.
I remember. Yeah. So I think that'd be my superpower. I'm not I'm not a hard worker. I'm an efficient worker. But I think surviving.
Yeah, I think for me, I am glad that I didn't get into real estate in 2004, 5, and 6.
I think we would have been out in 3 years.
Well, I think I saw all those guys, and what they had to recover from was way harder than what I had to recover from. I just had to recover from credit card debt. These guys had to recover from BKs, losing their cars, losing their houses.
6, 7, 8 houses, commercial buildings,
Right.
I mean, it was insane. And the other thing, the reason I'm glad I didn't get into it in 3 and 4, or 2, 3, 4, was that I think we would have learned really bad habits. When you get into it, when we did, you couldn't have bad habits. I mean, the best of the best were going out of business. Like if you survived 6 through 10, you're going to be all right.
Right. Yeah. So I got to cut my teeth.
Yeah.
In a bad time. So Everardo wants to know, what are some of the things you look for when you research a new market?
I actually have not gone to a new market since I went to Colorado. The reason being is just I just haven't wanted to grow it in other markets. I don't want to deal with the headache. I was a part of a big business and building a big business that went nationwide, and I didn't want to do it with the wholesale industry or the investment business, because I didn't want to be managing properties in other states, and I've got a wife and kids here. I'm not looking to travel all the time and be gone, and I just look at it as if I can make the money that I want to make in Maricopa County, and I can go to the office 3 or 4 days a week and do what I want to do. Yeah. I'm not looking to be the biggest guy in the nation by any means.
And then he has a follow-up question: is how are you determining how much investors are willing to pay for properties?
So I would say that 80 to 90% of our industry sells to the same 5 guys. So I kind of know their buy box. I know what they're going to pay for a property. My big thing is, like, I want all my investors to come back for a second, third, fourth, fifth house. I think there's a lot of guys in the space, maybe not a lot, but there are guys in the space that are like, all right, I want to see how deep I could take this guy, right? That's not me. I want to make sure that my guys are always coming back. I mean, Elman, for instance, I think in a given year, in 2017, they bought like 60 houses from me. And I want to make sure they're making money on every deal. I want to make sure the deals work out. I mean, I've written checks after closings to pay for roofs because we didn't know the roofs were bad. So I'll look at it as, what do I think this house is legitimately worth on the open market? What do I think it's going to cost to get it to that level? What is a reasonable return? All right, here's where we're going to price that property. And, there have been times where I've been off and 15 people offer us above what we wanted for it, and so be it. And then there's other times where it's like, all right, we got to bring it down $10,000. But,
what is your favorite, best, or most interesting failure?
Most interesting failure. We tried the short sale game for a while. I don't know if I would say we failed at it. We didn't overly succeed at it. It was just because we didn't know what we were doing. Most people didn't.
No, not at that time.
Yeah. And I shouldn't have done it because I was so focused on the auction business at that time, and I looked at it as like, well, let's build out the short sale arm. And it didn't go well at all. And it just, if anything, the short sale business did okay, but it took away from the auction business. So that was one of the bigger failures as far as real estate goes.
And I think that's a key point there. Not as far as short sales versus auctions, but there's, right now, a lot of people that are listening to the show, right? They're wholesalers, entrepreneurial, right? You're not going to be wholesaler if you're not entrepreneurial.
Right.
People overlook, like, man, I'm going to chase this other thing. I'm going to go after this other, distraction. Now you're going to have, harvest.
Right.
Fantastic distraction.
Yeah.
Right. But more often than not,
they're
distractions like your short sales, where they take away from your
the main business,
bread and butter.
Yeah. But one thing I would recommend to wholesalers is within real estate, at least, try to find a way to build long-term wealth. And that's what I think a lot of wholesalers don't realize today, is that it's quick money, it's fast money, it's good money, but it's short money. What I'm doing today, I wasn't doing in 15, and I wasn't doing in 12, and I wasn't doing in 8. And I would be willing to bet that in 2021 or 2022, this whole wholesale industry is going to be completely different than what it is today. So I would recommend to people, find a way to build your business to be sustainable, to survive in any market, and to actually build wealth, because this is all short-term money. It's all tax at ordinary income, and hopefully people are paying their taxes. But find a way within real estate to build long-term wealth.
This is a very, very high-paying job. People kind of lose sight of that. Sean wants to know, what are your requirements on your buy and hold?
On my buy and hold, I do an equity spread. So I want a specific amount of equity in it. I look at my net return. So when I factor my rents, I don't look at gross returns. Buy for $100,000, $1,000 a month. I don't look at that as a 12% return. I factor in internal cost of property management because I manage it internally. I look at property taxes, HOA. I do a percentage for renovations, not just going into it, but also holding back for future repairs. And then obviously the rental tax. So on my low end, depending on year built and equity, I have to be at 8.5% net. So after all expenses, I want to be at 8.5%. I also factor in depreciation because I look at it and I factor depreciation into my formula too. Not just, hey, what is this thing going to rent for, but how much am I going to be able to depreciate every year? What are the expenses that are going into it? So that's how I look at it.
I got a chance to meet Sean in Mississippi a couple of weeks back, and I'll be honest, I'm a little jealous, what they got in their situation, right? They're buying properties for like 50, 60K.
Yeah.
That they're renting out for like $800-900 a month.
Yeah, and I know guys that buy stuff in Indianapolis. Same thing, much higher returns, but there's not as big of an equity play.
No.
And they usually don't appreciate much. So it's like, yeah, you're buying it for 80 today, but it's probably going to be worth 80 to 90 in 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
I look at properties. I bought one this week in Mesa. I paid $178 for it. It already had tenants in there. I'm getting $1,450 a month, but most of the recent comps are in the $245 range. So I look at that and say, well, yeah, I'm getting a lower return, but I'm also walking into 28% equity.
Yeah.
But then I buy other ones that I pay 90 to 140 for. They're going to be much higher returns, but maybe smaller equity plays. So the portfolio kind of balances
it's a blend.
out. Yeah.
All right. Is there a book that you've gifted more than any other?
Shoe Dog. Phil Knight. Actually, I just started that this morning for the 3rd time.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess I really need to read it.
You haven't read it?
No. Ryan told me multiple times to read it. So what is it about that book that's like just screams at you?
The guy almost failed every single day for a decade. And what I really liked about Shoe Dog is he did not set out to build Nike to be the biggest shoe company in the world. He just didn't know what he wanted to do in life. He found something that he enjoyed and he was passionate about, and he just kind of started doing it. I like his philosophy on life a lot. He talks about, going into situations where most people would probably be maybe not self-doubt, but worry and stress. And he would look at it and kind of question like, all right, well, what do I know? Like, what's actually factual about this situation? I think a lot of times business owners will let their feelings and their mind get away from them and make decisions not based on reality, but what they perceive as reality. And so in that book, he was always very much like, what do I know? All right, it's a stressful situation, but what do I know? So how he made decisions, and I can't recommend that book enough. Shoe Dog is such a good book.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that you were a survivor earlier, so I can see why you like this book.
Yeah.
Kevin wants to know, if you had to start over, what would you do differently?
In real estate or life?
Probably real estate.
What would I do differently? I would have gone direct to seller in 2011-12. I would have started doing that a lot earlier. I would have, when I was 21, so what year was that? 08. I was meeting with my buddy's dad, and in Maryvale at the time, a part of Phoenix, you could buy properties for 12 to 30 grand. And I was sitting with him, I'm like, listen, I know these are going to be good deals one day. I know they're going to rent really well. If we go out and we buy, 30 of these things, you're under $1 million, and I know it's going to be good. And he said no, and I didn't push for anybody else. I was just like, all right, man, if he doesn't see it, I guess it's probably not a good opportunity. Yeah. Now, that $30,000 house, a steal is $120. A steal is $120.
Yeah.
So I wish I would have pushed harder for buy and hold opportunities. I bought rentals in 2009, 10, 11, sold them all within a year or two. Should have kept all those. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, look for the long-term wealth play. Because when I sold my rentals, it was like, I bought a 2-bedroom townhouse in Tempe for like $54,000. I think they're worth $200 today. Well, I sold it for $70, and I'm like, I'm gonna make $16,000. I'm out.
Yeah.
So build that long-term wealth, because I made $16,000. 8 of it went to taxes. So it's just make long-term decisions. Go for the long play.
So we got in February, Leon Johnson's going to be here, and I watched him speak on stage. He's doing half a mil per month passive. He's been doing real estate longer than we've been alive. But one of the things he said, they're like, what would you do differently? He's like, I never would have sold a property.
Yeah.
I wish I kept every single property.
I had a lady bring me a deal the other day, and she said, hey, I think the house is worth $300. Would you pay $250 for it? And I go and look at it, and I'm like, this looks familiar. I bought that house at auction for $99. Yeah, 8 years ago, 2011. I bought it for $99. Today, it's a decent deal at $250, and it's worth $300. I think we sold it within 3 months for like $140.
Yeah.
Gosh. So yeah, go long, don't sell.
Yeah, play the long game. All right, so I'm gonna let you think about last thoughts, any kind of announcements you want to make. So guys, I will be in 2 weeks in New Orleans with Chris Rude for Skillathon. There's some really, really big names speaking there. You got Ryan Stewman, the hardcore closer. You got Coach Michael Burt, a really successful coach for a lot of entrepreneurs, not just real estate. So if you want to check that out, go to bit.ly/2019skill. That's bit.ly/2019skill. And then I'm going to be in DC in April for Antoine Campbell's event for Drip. And then we still have our workshop coming up in the beginning of January. So Max and I are going to be going over our whole business. It's 2.5 days where we're just going to go over everything we do for our business step by step, where there will be no more questions about how we run our business. So if you want to make 2020 your year, go to disruptors.com, disruptors.com, to see if the workshop will make sense for you. And then we're not going to be on the show next week. It's Thanksgiving, but we got Ryan Shalaba coming in 2 weeks. He's going to talk about how he's running his flip operation on a massive scale in Pittsburgh. And I watched him speak, and it's just mind-blowing how easy he's making flipping look. So with that, last thoughts. Read
Shoe Dog. Best book I've ever read. Top 5 for sure. And then check out the data company, ivydata.com. It's ivydata.com. It was built for real estate. Really efficient, really good system. And Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
If someone wants to get a hold of you, how will they get a hold of you?
Email would be Kyle, Kyle, at ivyretech.com, or shoot me a message on Facebook.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you.
Yep.
Hopefully no one gets this episode taken down.